Call the member for Bowman.
Deputy Speaker, thank you. And what a refreshing debate we've enjoyed today by effectively decoupling this legislation from the ETS. And to my LNP colleague from Maranoa, wonderful to hear the support that we have from Queensland's largest seat for this legislation, and coming from a relatively tiny outer metropolitan seat, I want to sort of echo his views. Some have said that Bowman is the only seat in Australia that doubles in size at low tide. So you're quite right. We have a deep and abiding passion for the potential for tidal and also ocean current technology. That's all ahead of us, and it's an exciting future, but I also want to congratulate the government for finally taking that important step, decoupling this legislation. And what you've also effectively released is enthusiasm for the importance of renewable energy on both sides of this House, and our country can only benefit from that. I don't think now is an appropriate time to go through the history of the struggles we've had with ETS legislation, except to say it's probably also a good time now, with what I hope will be a win tonight, to move on from the 2007 notion that you're either a denier or a believer, that you're either a sceptic that needs to be shunned or you're evangelical about some sort of greater issue than any on the planet, and that is in fact emissions trading. It's a part of planning for the future of Australia, and we are far better to be pulling together the diverse and disparate views in Australia. We know they exist all around the world, and in fact, Deputy Speaker, I'd be concerned about a political party that didn't have those diverse views within it. I mean, we are effectively debating the key issues that are going to determine the success of our tradable goods, the success of Australia as an economy, and our ability as Australians to preserve the quality of life we enjoy now. The emissions trading system can potentially impact that. This small part that's been decoupled today is very important, because industry has been telling us that this is where they want to go. They need that target to have the certainty to invest, and I think that's why you've seen the support from both sides of the House being so strong. Now, so often, of course, in the Westminster parliamentary system, you're often trying to protect government from its own pig-headedness, and we've seen a little bit of that today, where there was reluctance to consider very, very constructive amendments that were put forward by our Shadow Minister. And I'm pleased to say that there has been some ground given, and in particular, and certainly for the member for Maranoa, who may or may not have realised the waste coal mine gas issue as being a recognised zero-emissions source of power really had to be included in this legislation, and I'm very glad that that has occurred. What has been potentially a bridge too far has been the issue of banding. And in a recent Shadow Cabinet discussion with renewable energy producers, the clear message was that while this is important technology and this is an important move forward to ensure the future of that technology, that this bill needs to recognise that banding could play a really important role, a very important role in protecting about a quarter of those gigawatt hours for emerging technologies that are not yet ready to take advantage of this legislation. And there is a range of those, from geothermal right across to large solar plants, that may not be quite ready yet to take advantage of the legislation. What we have, though, right now is a very murky and somewhat unhappy triad of stumbles by this government around solar energy that prefaces the debate that we're having tonight. And we don't need to trawl through the history of budget night when there are decisions and announcements made that effectively betrayed industry. There was then, on the 9th of June, the it was effectively summarily cut off the opportunity for those renewable incentives for solar providers, and then we saw again with the remote renewable program on the 22nd of June. And these three hits to the sector, I think it's worth mentioning, Deputy Speaker, have somewhat shaken the solar sector's confidence in the government to be able to make the long-term decisions that provide some certainty. I'm not going to stand here and convince everyone that the economics stacked up, nor that it was necessarily something that had to be that could have not been acted upon at some point. But what we really needed to do was give business some more certainty than that. And all I can say to the Minister, who was here until a minute ago, is take some lesson from the economic stability that was provided by this side of the House when in government, and learn from that that by giving business certainty, we can allow them to plan ahead. They can look forward and they can make the decisions that in the end are going to be right for the consumer. Please don't use small business. In fact, don't use business in general as something that can be kicked around and rules changed and carpet pulled from under them simply because you can. I mean, we know the government can, but try and find a way to do it to give as much certainty as possible to some of these very, very small providers who have faith and place their trust in government that decisions that they make will be there for some time, and if they do have to change, and obviously decisions do and policies have to change, that you'll give small business some chance to react to that rather than having to do what occurred in my electorate and in many others here on this side of the House, where we had people who had effectively placed deposits and ordered solar equipment ready for installation but hadn't necessarily got to the point where they could be guaranteed of getting the rebate. And that was tragic. I mean, that was families running around trying to contact the father who was off at work who couldn't sign on the dotted line, and solar companies who had all of these bonds and deposits that had been collected were unable to fulfil those contracts. And that was an ugly piece of federal government undermining of the work of small business right around this country, which were in the end only responding to government incentives in the first place in taking us forward with renewable energy. And that was an act of faith that I think was somewhat betrayed by this government. I'm glad to see that there's been some concession again following decoupling with the waste coal mine gas, but I would urge the government once again to consider this very, very important banding issue, that a quarter of those gigawatt hours could be protected for the renewable technologies that we know are only years away but cannot yet benefit. I would urge the government to consider that, but nonetheless, let's not forget today as being in what has been sort of months and months of somewhat disappointing polarisation around the issue of the ETS, a small moment where there's been relative agreement on this vital transition, that we're seeing the move where technology may well find us the solutions to this very, very important area of global emissions. Australia's playing its role. In fact, more than that, I mean, Australia is gifted geopolitically with our location and our weather and our coastline and our tides and our rivers to make not only a massive contribution, but to be able to provide and deliver renewable and clean power, Deputy Speaker, at potentially a fraction of the cost of what other continents can do. That can set Australia up. But what we will need to get there is not only this legislation, but I think a full consideration of emissions trading, and not a dogmatic, pig-headed approach that no idea can be improved. We need a government that will be responsive, that can work cooperatively, not only with the whole country, but particularly with those who are working in the sector that are coming forward with great technology. And to name one, the Better Place initiative that's just recently, Deputy Speaker, signed the electric car agreement with the ACT government, being the third jurisdiction that will be considering plug-in options for electric vehicles. An organisation, an initiative like this relies on certainty and stability, predictability from government, not one that shifts and changes with political fortunes, nor with the immediacies of daily political life, where suddenly a program is changed and business has to pay the price. We need to be encouraging the world to see Australia as a stable platform for renewable technology. The first step, I believe, will be taken tonight. It is great to see support on both sides of the chamber, and I look forward to the next step, which is finding a solution to global emissions that has the support of both sides of this chamber, that works to protect Australian interests, that prevents the export of jobs, prevents the leakage of carbon, and that finds Australia as a member of the lead pack of global economies that are going to find a solution to this most pressing of global challenges.